Our focus today is actually on something quite simple, and it is the concept of developing or creating sky in student work. I've got a variety of materials out here for us, things that you'll find in your classroom at any given time, hopefully, and they would include magic markers, colored pencils, oil pastel, chalk pastel, and paint. Now for this particular assignment, I'd like you to choose just one kind of media to work with. In this case here, I've started to use some magic marker, and only because I thought I'd address this quickly, in that magic markers often are not used as an art supply in a classroom, and I understand quite often students will make their artwork and color it all in with markers, and it ends up looking quite messy, and teachers like to steer away from that as a media. But maybe consider using something a little more stylistic, which would be the diagonal line, or any direction of line, in fact, but really keeping away from the drawing of the cloud. And that's why this particular assignment marker works really well for it, because it's really that idea of forethought of where you might place a cloud, keeping your lines paralleled, and really thinking ahead about what that cloud might be shaped like and how you're going to have others interpret it that in fact it is really a cloud you've drawn. It's not the easiest task to do, and students may need to try to do it several times before they really get the hang of it. So it is something kind of fun to do. And here I've just used a flashcard because sure enough, that is enough to get some practice in there without going through too many different materials and spending too much time working on it. So you'll see right here, this definitely looks like a couple of clouds floating in the sky, and yet all it really is when you look up close is some diagonal lines, parallel and somewhat tidy. In fact, they don't need to be perfect, and yet when you take a glance at that, and a whole series of them, in fact, if you had all your students do them, that would look great as a version of what sky is. Now, in this particular example, this is exactly what I want us to focus on today, is really the idea of not drawing the clouds, but leaving the clouds and drawing the sky. In fact, not drawing a sun, as you'd see in something like this, but in fact, leaving the sun. Often in student work, we'll find that funny little arc off into a corner, a variety of lines that may or may not come from it, and you may or may not see a happy face, but we always color it yellow, and it is always then considered sun. Off to the side, you may see two floating blue blobs, and of course they're considered to be cloud. If we were doing a landscape of any kind, we'd automatically pull out that green marker, wouldn't we? Oh geez, green marker, draw that horizon line right down there near the bottom, and then right on top of it, we're going to place our house without question. That is something we see quite often. Well, we're going to step away from this primary version of what a landscape and sky could look like and really move on to more of a realistic approach. Let's call it that, more of a realistic approach. And so we're going to use paint for this particular example. I'm going to put the markers aside, colored pencils and variation of pastels out of the way. And what we're going to do is really take a look at this paint here and how I've done it. Now this is a simple task and it shouldn't take students very long to do, but the end results can be really great. In fact, working smaller with a variety of kinds of paper even might be a fun way to go through this assignment. You'll notice that the paint is very watered down. That saves on the idea of having to have an extra dish of water around, which is often what is spilled. And so we've got just some really watered down blue paint. That's all that we need today. So I'm going to get started right away and show you what I mean by creating sky by not drawing in the clouds or the sun. So I'm going to start right away. I've always got my kind of imaginary border, and I just start painting, laying the paint down. There's no real rhyme or reason to how it goes down. It's not that it has to have a special kind of brush stroke. But you do want to take advantage of that watery paint, and you'll see that it leaves some really dark areas where it's pooled and lighter areas where I've brushed over it quickly. Use that to the advantage, and then make sure that you've got your border kind of in there, and we're going to get started on putting kind of a sun in this image. Now in order to put the sun, I don't need it to be perfect. It doesn't have to be an absolute perfect circle, and I don't definitely want to end up with a ring around it that's something that I've drawn. So I wouldn't let that sit very long because that'll dry up that way, and then I won't have the same result if I get it to blend right in. So there we go. We've got a sun happening, And very quickly this is coming together, and I've got a nice big set of clouds here. I guess they're cumulonimbus today. And again, you can certainly spend some time in your classroom looking out the window and seeing what's out there. What kind of clouds have you got in the sky, and what do you notice about the clouds? And even spend some time looking on the site in our little selection of clouds, so you can really get an idea of what the students can be creating. Maybe they've gotten something ahead in mind in terms of maybe a stratus, a cumulonimbus. Maybe they choose to add a little bit of gray to your paint, or a black to the paint. And then definitely, I wouldn't work into it very much. As you can see, we're already done. All we've done was paint the sky, not paint the clouds, not paint a sun. In fact, leaving everything else white, painted sky, and that's that. One thing that I do notice with this particular kind of paper is that my pooling is starting to, you see that right there? It's starting to meld into kind of a folded wave. You don't want that to happen. So again, just watching it for a little bit, using the best kinds of paper you can, but I didn't want to use my very best today because then it wouldn't be as realistic to what you might find in your classroom. So I'm just going to spread that around, and there we go. We've got a very simple sky created, a whole series of them. Displayed outside your classroom or anywhere in your room would look fantastic. So it's definitely something to consider.